Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today, we're taking a fascinating look at what makes a city square truly iconic.
hmm
We've got insights from an article on 10 most, today it's called 10 Most Famous City Squares in the World. And our mission, really, is to dig deeper.
Yeah, go beyond just the pictures.
Exactly. Uncover the history, the culture, and those, surprising little details that make these places so much more than just spots on a map.
Absolutely. And what's really striking looking at this list is how different they all are in achieving that status.
Yeah.
Is it like sheer modernity or deep history or cultural buzz?
Or a mix.
Or a mix, yeah. Each one tells a really unique city story.
Okay, let's jump right in. First up, the absolute sensory explosion of Times Square in New York City.
Can't really miss that one.
No way.
Yeah.
Right at Broadway and 7th Avenue, and you're just
Mhm.
surrounded by these massive video screens, LEDs, flashing lights. The article calls it a huge tourist magnet, and nighttime there must be intense.
Oh, totally overwhelming, I bet. And you have the New Year's Eve ball drop, of course.
Right? That global televised thing. It's become synonymous with New Year's.
It's interesting, though, how Times Square's fame is so tied to media and entertainment, right? It's not like some squares with centuries of, say, civic history. It's a more recent kind of fame.
That's true.
Makes you wonder if that intense commercial focus changes what a central public space even is anymore. Is it less about community and more about spectacle?
Good question. Has it traded one role for another? Okay, let's shift gears completely. Red Square, Moscow.
Ah, yes. Deep history.
Right in the heart of the city, and it's just framed by these giants. You've got St. Basil's Cathedral, those iconic domes, the State History Museum, Lenin's Mausoleum, the Kremlin walls.
Yeah, it's incredibly imposing. The article definitely nails it. As Russia's most recognizable landmark, you really feel the history there.
You do.
And, the name Red Square Krasnaya in Russian originally meant beautiful, not red.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the meaning shifted over time, especially with the political associations later on. It kind of makes you think about how the names and the symbolic weight of these places evolve.
Yeah.
What stories do the names themselves carry?
That's fascinating. Okay, from Moscow's grandeur to, well, something completely different. Jama El Fina in Marrakech, Morocco.
The heart of the Medina. A totally different vibe.
Totally. The article paints this amazing picture. Daytime, you've got snake charmers, people with monkeys, stalls everywhere. It's already buzzing.
Right, classic Marrakech image.
But then, as the day goes on, it transforms. Storytellers come out, magicians, traditional medicine sellers.
Oh, wow.
And then at night, boom, it becomes this huge outdoor food market, packed with people, energy everywhere. It sounds like a living theater.
What's amazing about Jamal Fana is how old those traditions are. It's been a gathering spot for centuries, and that world commerce, entertainment, social hub, it's just continued.
Despite everything changing around it.
Exactly. It really shows how some squares are like these enduring stages for age-old practices right in a modern city. How does that even happen in such a fast-paced world?
Good point. Right, next up, let's go to Vatican City, St. Peter's Square.
A very specific, very powerful space.
Absolutely, right in front of St. Peter's Basilica. And the article mentions that big Egyptian obelisk in the center.
Yeah, the one brought over by Emperor Augustus.
Right, and moved to its current spot way later in 1586. And get this historical tidbit. Apparently, back in the Middle Ages, people thought a golden ball on top held Julius Caesar's ashes.
No way.
Yeah, but when they finally checked, empty. I love little stories like that.
It definitely adds some mystique, doesn't it? But what's really key about St. Peter's Square is the architecture itself. It's designed for gathering, for procession, leading you towards the basilica.
Those colonnades that sort of embrace you.
Exactly. The whole shape, the layout, it's meant to shape your experience, your emotions even. It makes you think, how much does the physical design of a square dictate how people feel and act within it?
Okay, let's move east now to Beijing, Tiananmen Square.
A place with immense scale and significant history.
Huge scale. The article says it's the largest city square globally, and it's characterized by those, well, Soviet-style monuments and government buildings. Very imposing.
And the daily flag ceremonies.
Right. At dawn and dusk, must be quite a sight.
Oh.
But the article also points out you can't talk about Tiananmen Square without mentioning the tragic events of June 4th, 1989.
No, you can't. That's intrinsically linked to its global recognition, unfortunately.
It carries a very heavy weight.
Indeed. And that vastness, the surrounding architecture, it all speaks to its role as a center of national power in China. The 1989 reference is just a stark reminder of how squares can become flashpoints for major political movements, sometimes with really lasting tragic outcomes. It's that intersection of public space and political history.
Definitely. Okay, shifting focus again. Trafalgar Square, London, commemorating military history this time.
Nelson's victory at Trafalgar, 1805.
Exactly. You've got Nelson's column right there in the middle, him on top, guarded by those four massive lions, plus the big fountains, instantly recognizable.
Totally iconic London.
It's become internationally famous, a must-see spot.
And it's interesting because that area used to be like royal stables. So it was a conscious decision to transform it into a public space celebrating a national hero.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, choosing Nelson, adding symbolic things like the lions. It was all about building national identity and commemorating that victory. Shows how squares can be actively created for that purpose.
Right. Now let's head to Italy, Siena and the Piazza del Campo.
Oh, this one sounds beautiful. Medieval Europe.
Absolutely. The article describes it as shell-shaped, right in the historic center, calls it one of Europe's great medieval squares, beautiful, architecturally harmonious.
Lovely.
And then there's the Palio di Siena.
The horse race.
Yes. Twice a year, they cover the piazza track with dirt, and riders race bareback 3 times around. It sounds incredibly intense and culturally vital.
Definitely. And that shell shape wasn't just pretty. It worked well historically as a marketplace and a gathering spot. The Palio is such a great example of a square being absolutely central to a long-standing tradition. It literally transforms into a racetrack.
While still being a square the rest of the year.
Exactly. It makes you think about how those historical uses embed themselves in the square's identity today.
Okay, heading south now. South America. Plaza de Mayo in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
A square steeped in revolution and politics.
Totally. The article highlights its role in the May 25th, 1810 revolution, the start of Argentinian independence.
Wow, the very site.
Yeah, and apparently it's been the focal point for political events ever since. You've got the Pyramid de Mayo, the city's oldest monument, right there. And it's surrounded by key buildings like the Casa Rosada.
The president's office. The Pink House.
Right, so history isn't just remembered there, it feels like it's still happening.
Absolutely. Plaza de Mayo really shows how squares function as these vital spaces for civic life, for public expression. Having government buildings right next to a monument celebrating independence creates this powerful dynamic.
A stage for the people and government.
Exactly. For celebration, but also for protest. It's ongoing.
Right. Okay, back to Europe. Prague, Czech Republic, the Old Town Square.
Ah, another gorgeous one. Between Wenceslas Square and Charles Bridge.
Yeah, the article says it's super popular with tourists and locals, especially in summer. And it's this amazing mix of architecture. You've got the Gothic tin cathedral, the Baroque St. Nicholas Church.
And the astronomical clock.
Yes,
Yeah.
world famous. It sounds like a place where centuries just sort of layer on top of each other beautifully.
It really does. Prague's Old Town Square is a perfect example of evolving into a huge tourist draw while keeping its historical character. The mix of styles tells the city's long story. And what's cool is how it still feels like a lively public space, you know? It adapts to crowds, but doesn't seem to lose its core appeal, even for locals.
Okay, last stop on our tour. Mexico City. The Zócalo or Plaza de la Constitución.
Another massive one of the world's largest.
Right in the historic heart of Mexico City. Surrounded by the Metropolitan Cathedral, the National Palace, other historic buildings, and there's a huge Mexican flag in the center.
With daily ceremonies, raising and lowering it.
Yeah, sounds very symbolic. But what's truly mind-blowing is the article mentions this has been a central gathering place since Aztec times.
That's incredible continuity.
Isn't it? Just layers upon layers of history.
Absolutely. The Zócalo's continuous use from the Aztecs right through to today is extraordinary. It just underlines how vital these public spaces are for community, politics, cultural identity across completely different eras.
And having the main cathedral and the National Palace right there just reinforces its central importance.
The absolute heart of Mexican life, historically and today.
So that's our journey through 10 incredible city squares. Wow, each one is so unique, telling its own story.
Yeah, from Times Square's bright lights to the Zócalo's ancient roots.
They're clearly more than just open spaces. They're hubs of history, culture, connection.
Definitely. And thinking about all this diversity, all this history, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
About what?
Well, in our world now, so digital, so connected online, How are public spaces going to keep evolving? What will they look like? What kind of stories will future squares tell about us? Maybe they won't all be physical.
Hmm. Physical versus virtual squares. That's a really interesting thought to end on. What stories will they tell?